Hello everybody, welcome back to our channel. We are going to be speaking about Bitcoin, how it's on that slightly lower downward fall, and how Cardano is continuing to crash and burn. If you haven't already, subscribe, drop a comment, and hammer on the like button for the latest crypto news. Let's take a look at Bitcoin, shall we? Looking at Bitcoin today, Bitcoin is not the hottest. It is looking pretty cold. We were calling it before about how Bitcoin could potentially start to drop, and it looks like it is looking the same. Speaking of Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin today is kind of not doing so great. It's around 60,000, but it could potentially go lower, and that's what I'm expecting. Considering that it did have an all-time high at the end of October, we could possibly see something further. If it goes up, then it's going to be doing great, but I don't particularly think it's going to be going up anytime soon. And why is that? Well, the last time we had a big high, and we're speaking about here, before that all-time high back in October, that last big-time high we had was in September. It looked great. Then we had a new line of resistance here, a new line of support, and it was around 40,000 when we had that line. But that's not exactly why I think so, right? So why I think so is because that pattern that we have now is looking pretty familiar. When we're looking here, the last time we had a big pump, which we can kind of simulate it from here, we had that big pump back in July. You can see in July that bottom is starting to kind of fall down. Everybody was like freaking out. That was in July, and then the top we had was at the end of July, right? And we had that same looking pattern, and this is where it started to drop. However, I don't think it's going to be quite the same. If we're kind of noting from around 41,000 to 38, it's not that big of a difference, but keep in mind, I called it around 55, 54. Even if it does the same, for example, the 60 is around 57, which isn't too bad, which that last drop we had was at 60 and 8, right? So it's not so bad, but it could potentially get worse. Now we are kind of bottoming out. We do have that new line of resistance, kind of like looking as we're starting to form. But I would be cautious because it is that crypto winter. So it's looking rather bearish in my eyes. Now this is a daily, of course. Now looking at the weekly, looking at that is still not great. So it closed out on the week, but it's still in the red. So it is still kind of bleeding out with a really ugly candle. I don't like to see any red candles. For me, they're all very ugly. Of course, it needs to be reasonable. It does happen. It is the crypto metaverse. But with that being said, I would expect, of course, that pattern when it started to fall, that last big fall weekly was from May, right? And when we're speaking about that, so 58,000, it did plummet down to 34. And that's what I want you guys to pay attention to, because that could potentially be the same kind of pattern that we had. If we look here, the same kind of pattern, somewhat of the same essence, this whole deal here in the last few months is going, I believe, is going to kind of simulate, this one right here. And that's what I would expect to kind of see happen in the near future, is some kind of similar little drop, and then, another little drop, and then slowly kind of moving at an upward angle, and then, of course, finally reaching back up. But we are at an all-time high, so it does look a little scary for my taste, so we will keep an eye and see how it goes. Still too close to call, but the weekly is not looking too great. Even if we're lucky, it will go sideways, which I do hope, but I would still expect 57, 55 at the bare minimum. Now, in other news, we have Solana. Solana is really doing great, guys. Solana's pumping, while Bitcoin's kind of looking like a little, shaking the ship a little bit. Well, Solana is doing fantastic. I want to point your attention to something. So from August, right? From August to September, which is just a few months, right? August, September, October, November, right? So August and September, 2 months was really good for Solana. It actually broke an all-time high, and it was looking absolutely beautiful. Not only that, we still have an all-time high that we're still breaking now. Up here recently, closing of the day here, it is looking fantastic. Now, so it looks very good time for Solana. It actually recently passed Cardano as well and Tether, so it's still doing perfectly. When we're looking at the week, it's even doing even better. It is completely pounding it. It is taking it to drive town. So do keep an eye on Solana as well. It's definitely benefiting along with the rest of the game coins, altcoins. They're doing perfect. Speaking of the ever so sad Cardano, Cardano is just pitiful. We said it before, we said it again, I'll say it again. But it looks rather bad. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. Now, the daily, it does kind of give you hope, but it's not going to happen, guys. You see, as we're kind of hanging out in the midline here, as we hang on this bottom half, the worse it's going to be. If we can potentially break out of this habit, we could go up, but it looks like it is just going to continue to fall out. It is bleeding. When we're looking at the weekly as well, it looks even worse. I'm even scared to show you guys. The weekly still like right here. So it is doing potentially a little bit better, but still not recovering quite as well as we want. We're still hanging in that kind of half line mark. It's just catastrophic. So do keep an eye on this as well. Cardano is very sad. You're losing money. And I think the more it drops, the more people are going to freak out and completely run away from this thing. So we really need to be cautious with this. Maybe potentially it goes, but that last all-time high that it had being here in August, that was its great golden moment, but it looks like it might have been finished, and I would really not expect for Cardano really to get you too much of anything. It looks like we kind of capped out here, but if we're lucky, it could go. So we do want to see some bearish movement for the week. It is looking bullish. I'm sorry, but we want to see it be more bullish. Of course, have a nice bull rally soon, but soon is just not in the cards. So we shall see. Ethereum, on another note, Ethereum is still killing it too. Of course, with the daily, it looks pretty bad for the past couple of days. It is starting to kind of follow out. Now it is kind of still moving at an upward angle. It's kind of coming down a little bit after a big hype, but it's still pretty good. Of course, that high that we had back in September, and of course we had that high recently in November. Still, a lot of coins are actually breaking out here. But when you really look at the chart, so back from July, if even when you compare from just a few months, right, a half a year, it's really exploded. I mean, absolutely just took off. So it's still a good time for Ethereum. Ethereum's still kind of killing it as well. So we'll see about where that goes from now. So we want to see that more. I would expect for it to actually kind of come back up too as well. So we'll watch on that. For the weekly here, weekly, this is what I think is the most important. When you're following day by day, of course the day by day is going to kind of really put you in a panic, right? But when we're following it for the weekly, it's still doing fantastic, guys. Look at that. Look at those green candles weekly. It is just beautiful. I love it. On the weekly calendar, of course, it always looks better. But, you know, here back in September, August, and September, we kind of had that fall too. But then it actually came to actually break an all-time high. And so that's where we want. And before that, back in May, that was that big high before the drop. So it could potentially go down a little bit, but I would expect for it to keep climbing a little bit longer before it does do that. All right. In other news, so we spoke about XRP. XRP, too, for the daily looks pretty ugly. Again, but XRP still killing it, and it's a little risky. So if you want to really kind of be a risky person, XRP is right now. A good time to buy was back in September on the daily, right? So it's September 21st, or even in October was a really good time to buy. Consider we had that nice little dip and that bounce back that's coming up. So we do have that line of support back in October. Ending of October was pretty good to kind of buy into that dip. So pretty good risk reward, I think, when we're considering. But I would expect it to go up, especially when we look at the weekly, right? So the weekly is still doing pretty good too. It is not the greatest, of course, but it is still climbing. When we're considering the rest of the patterns as well, of course, it's climbing, drops, and then climbing. Right now, XRP on the weekly, the last big pump we had was back in May, was that all-time high that it had. So that was very, very big as well. But I'm sorry, not all-time high. It was pretty high there. The all-time high we had was back a few years ago, of course, but it's not quite the same. But it did start climbing back up again to put you there. In the cryptocurrency world, speaking of Bitcoin, so for the 24-hour period is $1.87% in the red, and $1, 1%. And for the weekly is 1.39% in the red, so it is showing that kind of decline. Ethereum, as we were just speaking about, Ethereum still doing pretty good for the 24-hour period. It is at number 2 or minus 3.09% and 1.75% on the weekly. So it is for the last day. Ethereum wasn't too hot, but the last week, the 7-day period is still doing pretty good. Solana as well, as we're speaking, Solana is still killing it. Solana is at 2.55% in the green for the daily and 25.41 for the week. Still doing fantastic. It did pass Tether. Tether isn't doing so hot for the 24-hour period. Well, it's not doing so hot. It's still not doing bad. But the 7-day period is at 0.05%. So it's kind of moving sideways, just kind of dying out. And of course, Cardano, when we look, it's not doing too horribly bad either now, but it's still looking like it's still going to fall at a 1.68% for the 24-hour period and 0.76% of the weekly. Now, XRP is not so great either, not so bad, but at 2.75% for the daily and 4.37% for the weekly, which I would consider good. Of course, Polkadot's still killing it too at 16.48 as well. Shiba has kind of took a fall this last week at 17.25%, and the green for the 24-hour period at 15.50. So it's doing pretty well as well. Polygon's kind of hanging out here for the past week as well. So I'd watch that, and I would actually keep an eye for Axel as well, Axie Infinity. Keep an eye on that coin. It could actually take off as well. In news today as well, we also have that some other great news for you. It is about Solana. Solana's impressive market performance was followed by a cover-up of additional 12 million coins in secret wallet. All right, so the CEO of Cyber Capital, Justin Bonds, has uncovered the fact that Solana project had an additional 12 million coins hidden in a market maker wallet, which makes the total circulating supply of 20 million instead of 8 million. Now, according to Bond, Solana has been covering up the fact that there are an additional 12 million undisclosed coins in existence. Now, after a third-party audit, the secret wallet has been found, which later led to a Medium article by the project's officials explaining the cover-up. Now, in the explanation, the team stated that those coins have been used for market-making purposes only. Now, the team has also promised to burn those coins in a 30-day period since they were initially loaned to the market maker. Now, on May 23rd, according to Bond, Solana announced that it took back 3.3 million coins out of a total of 11.3 loaned in order to fulfill its promise. Now, Solana released 8 million new coins and burned them afterwards, Bond said. Currently, Solana's circulating supply is way past the initial stated 8 million and sitting at around 300 million. But the fate of the undisclosed 12 million coins remains quite unclear. Besides the problems with issuance, Solana's price has been steadily rising and remains strong in the top performer since August. Solana's price has increased by 739%. See, that's fantastic. It's trading 247 with 20% growth in the past week, besides market correction and consolidation. This week in coins too, Bitcoin cools off while Solana, Polkadot, and Ethereum rallied to all-time highs. We know that. We did go over that as well. So instead, Ethereum, Solana, and Polkadot took up the baton when Bitcoin kind of dropped the charge here on ahead. All of them setting all new time highs midweek. Polkadot hit a new record price of $55. It's worth around $49 at the time of writing. That's about 10% short of Thursday's. But broadly speaking, it's still about 13.43% higher than it was 7 days ago. Still pretty great. Polkadot, of course, Polkadot Network. We know that it is described as the multi-chain network, and Polkadot announced that parachains are coming to the network. As beginning of this month, developers who have some DOT in their wallets will be able to register parachains in Polkadot Network as well. Fantastic news. So keep an eye on those Polkadots, guys. Keep an eye on that. Solana, XRP, Bitcoin as well. We'll see how it's going. We'll be able to make some judgment from that. Thank all of you guys for watching. I hope you see you again. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to drop a comment and like the channel. All right, guys. I will see you soon. Thank you for watching.